Deep beneath the crystal surface of planet Vilthara, the underground city of Morvac hummed with desperate activity. The air smelled of fear and dying hope. In the grand chamber at the city's heart, dozens of reptilian beings called Velkari gathered around an ancient stone circle carved with symbols that glowed faintly blue. High Priestess Nara stood at the center of the circle, her scaled hands trembling as she held an ornate staff topped with a pulsing crystal. Her golden eyes swept across the assembled crowd. Every face showed the same mixture of terror and fragile hope. They had lived underground for 300 years and their people were dying. "Today we break the oldest law," Nara announced, her voice echoing through the chamber. "Today we reach across the void between worlds to call for help." Elder Junho stepped forward from the council circle. His ancient scales bore the scars of many battles fought in the tunnels below. "The surface world belongs to the Shadow Maw now," he said. "Our children grow weak without sunlight. Our food stores run low. Our mining equipment lies broken and scattered across the crystal plains above." The crowd murmured in agreement. Everyone knew the truth. The Shadow Maw had claimed the entire surface world as its hunting ground. No Velkari could venture above without facing almost certain death. The beast was 15 feet tall with obsidian scales and 6 glowing eyes. It could move through the crystal forests without making a sound, and its roar could shatter stone. "The ancient texts speak of warriors from distant worlds," Nara continued. "Beings who can adapt to any threat and overcome any enemy. We have found such a world. We have found Earth." She raised her staff high above her head. The crystal began to pulse faster, and the carved symbols around the stone circle started glowing brighter. "But this summoning requires sacrifice. It will drain the life force from those who power it. Who among you will give your years so that our people might live?" 12 Velkari stepped forward without hesitation. They were the oldest and the weakest, those who had already accepted that their time was nearly over. They took positions around the inner circle and joined hands. "We do this willingly," spoke Elder Harim, the oldest among them. "Let our remaining years buy hope for the young ones." Nara nodded gravely and began the ritual. She spoke words in the old tongue that had not been heard for generations. The symbols carved into the stone began to spin and shift. The volunteers around the inner circle grew pale as their life energy flowed into the ancient magic. The air above the stone circle began to shimmer and bend. Reality twisted like heated metal, and a sound like tearing fabric filled the chamber. The crystal formations throughout the room resonated with harmonic frequencies that made every Velkari's teeth ache. "Focus on the warrior world," Nara commanded, sweat beading on her scaled forehead. "Find one who knows both combat and survival. One who can face the Shadow Maw and win." The portal opened like a wound in the air itself. Through the shimmering gap, they could see another world. Snow-covered mountains stretched into a gray sky. The air that came through the portal was thin and cold, carrying scents the Velkari had never experienced. On the mountainside, visible through the portal, a figure in strange clothing moved carefully across an icy ledge. The being was smaller than a Velkari, but moved with fluid precision. It carried ropes and metal devices that clinked softly in the wind. "There," Junho whispered. "A hunter. A survivor." Nara pushed more power into the summoning. The volunteers around the inner circle aged visibly as years of their lives fed the ritual. "Come to us, warrior of Earth. Your world has need, but ours has greater need." The portal expanded and an invisible force reached across the void between worlds. The human on the mountainside stumbled as reality bent around him. One moment he was reaching for a handhold on the ice-covered rock. The next moment he was falling through a hole in space itself. Captain Do-Yun Kim tumbled through the portal and landed hard on the stone floor of the chamber. His climbing gear scattered around him as he rolled to absorb the impact. Years of military training kicked in immediately. He came up in a fighting crouch, his eyes scanning for threats while his mind tried to process what had just happened. The first thing he noticed was that he could breathe. The air was warm and humid, completely different from the mountain environment he had been in seconds before. The second thing he noticed was that he was surrounded by creatures that looked like walking lizards with intelligence in their eyes. "Do not fear us, warrior of Earth," Nara said, activating a translation device that hung from her neck. The words came out in accented but understandable Korean. "We have brought you here because we need your help." Do-Hyun slowly stood up, keeping his hands visible but ready to move. His military mind cataloged everything he could see. Underground chamber. Ancient architecture. Advanced technology mixed with primitive ritual elements. Non-human intelligent species showing signs of desperation and fear. "Where am I?" he asked, his voice steady despite the impossibility of the situation. "You are on Velthara in the underground city of Morvac," Elder Junho replied through his own translator. "We are the Velkari people, and we have summoned you across space itself because our world is dying." Do-hyun looked around the chamber again. He saw the exhausted volunteers who had aged decades and minutes to power the summoning. He saw the fear in every reptilian face, the way they flinched at sounds from above, the desperate hope in their golden eyes. "What do you need me to do?" he asked. Nara stepped forward, leaning heavily on her staff. The ritual had drained her as well. "There is a creature that has claimed our surface world. We call it the Shadow Maw. For 300 years it has killed any of our people who venture above ground. Our children grow weak without sunlight. Our food sources fail. Our civilization dies slowly in these tunnels." She gestured toward the ceiling, toward the surface world far above. "We need you to go above and kill the Shadow Maw. End its reign of terror so our people can reclaim the world our ancestors built." Do-hyun considered this. He had been trained for many types of combat, but hunting alien monsters was not covered in any manual he knew. Still, these beings had risked everything to bring him here. Their desperation was real, and their need was clearly urgent. "What can you tell me about this creature?" he asked. "How does it hunt? What are its weaknesses?" The Velkari exchanged glances. "It is death itself," whispered one of the younger council members. "It strikes without warning and leaves no survivors. Our weapons cannot pierce its hide. Our fastest runners cannot escape its speed." Do-hyun frowned. That description told him nothing useful. Has anyone actually observed its behavior and lived to report back? "The automated mining systems record everything," Junho said. "We have footage of its attacks, though watching them is difficult." "I will need to see those recordings," Do-hyun said. "And I will need equipment suitable for surface conditions. What can you offer in return for my help?" "Anything we have," Nara replied without hesitation. "Our technology, our knowledge. Safe passage back to your world when the task is complete." "Name your price, warrior of Earth." Do-hyun looked around the chamber one more time. These beings had sacrificed years of their people's lives just to bring him here. Their entire civilization hung on the edge of extinction. Whatever this Shadow Maw was, it had terrorized them for centuries. But something in their description bothered him. In his experience, true apex predators did not waste energy on unnecessary killing. They hunted for food, defended territory, or eliminated threats. A creature that simply killed for the sake of killing was usually either mad or misunderstood. "I accept your contract," he said finally, "but I do this my way. I study the target first. I learn its patterns. Only then do I act." Nara nodded eagerly. "Whatever method you choose, warrior. We trust in your skills." As the Velkari began to disperse, chattering excitedly about their new hope, Do-hyun gathered his scattered climbing gear. He had a feeling that understanding the Shadow Maw would be more important than simply killing it. But first he needed to see exactly what they were up against. 3 days after his arrival, Do-hyun stood at the entrance to the surface world. The massive metal doors had not been opened in over 50 years. Elder Junho operated the ancient controls while a team of technicians checked the environmental suit they had modified for human use. "The air above is breathable," Junho explained through his translator. "But the temperature changes quickly, and the crystal formations can create dangerous energy discharges during storms." Do-hyun tested the suit's mobility. It was bulky but functional, with built-in communication systems and energy shields. The Velkari had also provided him with their most advanced weapons, though he hoped he would not need them immediately. "Remember," Nara said as she approached the group, "the Shadow Maw is most active during the day cycle. It seems to enjoy hunting in the light of our twin suns." The doors ground open slowly, revealing the first glimpse of Velthara's surface world. Do-hyun caught his breath. The view was absolutely magnificent. Towering crystal formations rose like frozen lightning from the ground, their surfaces reflecting and refracting light in impossible patterns. Floating islands drifted slowly overhead, connected by bridges of solidified energy. The twin suns cast everything in a golden blue glow that made the entire landscape look like a living jewel. "Your ancestors built all this?" Do-hyun asked, staring at the crystal cities visible in the distance. "They lived among it," Junho corrected. "The crystals grew naturally. Our people simply learned to shape them and live within their patterns." Do-hyun stepped through the doorway onto the surface for the first time. The ground beneath his feet was smooth crystal that rang like a bell with each step. The air tasted clean and sharp, filled with energy that made his skin tingle. "I will monitor your progress from the command center," Nara said. "If you encounter the Shadow Maw, do not hesitate to use the weapons we have given you." Do-hyun nodded but kept his doubts to himself. He had spent the previous day reviewing the recorded attacks, and something about them did not match the behavior of a mindless killer. The Shadow Maw's movements were too precise, too purposeful. It destroyed mining equipment but left the crystal formations untouched. It killed Velkari who entered certain areas but ignored automated systems in others. He set off across the crystal plains, following the path toward the largest cluster of abandoned mining sites. His first priority was to understand the creature's territory and hunting patterns. Only then could he decide how to approach it. The surface world was eerily quiet. No birds sang in the crystal trees. No insects buzzed in the strange flowering plants that grew between the formations. The only sounds were his footsteps and the distant harmonic resonance of crystal structures responding to the solar wind. As he walked, Do-hyun began to notice something the Velkari had not mentioned. The crystal formations were not randomly placed. They followed specific patterns that reminded him of neural networks or river systems. Each formation was connected to others by thin lines of energy that pulsed with regular rhythms. "Junho," he said into his communicator, "these crystal patterns, they look organized, almost like they serve a purpose." "The crystals have always grown in those patterns," came the reply. "Our ancestors believed they were connected to the planet's core somehow." Do-hyun knelt beside one of the smaller formations and extended his hand toward it. The moment his gloved fingers came close to the surface, the crystal began to glow more brightly. Lines of energy raced away from the contact point, spreading across the network like ripples on water. "Interesting," he murmured. "They respond to bioelectric fields." He continued deeper into what the Velkari called the Forbidden Zone, the area where the Shadow Maw was most often seen. The crystal formations here were larger and more complex, some reaching hundreds of feet into the sky. Energy patterns flowed between them like aurora displays, creating a light show that was beautiful and hypnotic. It was near the largest formation that Do-hyun first saw signs of the Shadow Maw. Claw marks scored the crystal surface in precise lines. The gouges were deep but carefully placed, as if the creature had been carving symbols rather than randomly scratching. He followed the trail of marks for over an hour, documenting everything with his suit's recording systems. The pattern became clear. The Shadow Maw was not randomly destructive. Its claw marks followed the energy lines in the crystal network, and they seemed to be maintaining or adjusting something rather than destroying it. The first direct encounter happened suddenly. Do-hyun was examining a section of damaged mining equipment when a shadow fell across him. He looked up to see the Shadow Maw standing on a crystal outcropping 30 feet away. The creature was even more magnificent than the recordings had suggested. Its obsidian scales seemed to absorb light while simultaneously reflecting it in patterns that hurt to look at directly. 6 eyes arranged in 2 rows tracked his movements independently, showing an intelligence that was unmistakably real. Bioluminescent patterns along its neck and shoulders pulsed in complex rhythms. Do-hyun slowly stood up, keeping his movements non-threatening. Every instinct told him to remain calm. The Shadow Maw was studying him just as intently as he was studying it. "Hello there," he said softly, knowing the creature could not understand his words but hoping his tone would convey peaceful intent. The Shadow Maw tilted its massive head to one side and made a sound unlike anything Do-hyun had ever heard. It was part growl, part musical tone, and part harmonic vibration that seemed to resonate with the crystal formations around them. The bioluminescent patterns on its hide shifted and changed, cycling through colors and sequences with obvious purpose. "You are trying to communicate," Do-hyun realized aloud. "Those patterns, they mean something." He took a careful step forward. The Shadow Maw did not retreat or show signs of aggression. Instead, it repeated the light pattern sequence more slowly this time. When Do-hyun did not respond, it tried a different sequence. "I wish I understood what you were saying," Do-hyun said, raising his hands to show they were empty of weapons. The Shadow Maw made another harmonic sound and gestured with one massive clawed hand toward the damaged mining equipment. The bioluminescent display on its hide showed rapid flashes of red and orange, and its posture suggested agitation or distress. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, The shadow maw turned and walked away. It moved with fluid grace despite its size, disappearing among the crystal formations without making a sound. Do-hyun stood frozen for several minutes, processing what had just happened. The creature had not attacked him. It had not shown territorial aggression. Instead, it had attempted to communicate, and it had expressed what looked like concern or frustration about the mining equipment. Do-hyun. Nara's voice crackled through his communicator. We show your vital signs spiking. What is your status? I just met the shadow maw, he replied, still staring in the direction the creature had gone. Are you injured? Do you need immediate extraction? No, Do-hyun said slowly. I am fine, but I think we need to reconsider everything we think we know about this creature. He spent the rest of the day documenting the encounter and examining the mining site more carefully. The equipment had not been randomly destroyed. Specific components had been targeted and removed while others were left intact. The pattern suggested someone who understood the technology and was selectively disabling it. As the twin suns began to set, painting the crystal world in shades of gold and crimson, Do-hyun made his way back toward the underground city. His mind raced with new questions and theories. The shadow maw was not a mindless predator. It was intelligent, possibly more intelligent than the Velkhari gave it credit for. It had tried to communicate with him, and it had shown restraint when it could easily have killed him. But if it was not the monster the Velkhari believed it to be, then what was it really? And why had 300 years of conflict developed between two obviously intelligent species? I need access to older historical records, he told Junho as he passed through the surface entrance. I want to see what your people's relationship with the shadow maw was like before the conflict began. Junho looked surprised. You believe there was a relationship? I believe there was more than a relationship, Do-hyun replied. I think there was cooperation, and I think something went very wrong. Do-hyun spent the next morning deep in the Velkhari archives with Minho, a young scholar who had volunteered to help translate the older documents. The archive chamber was vast, with crystal storage devices containing thousands of years of Velkhari history, stacked from floor to ceiling. Most of these records are from after we moved underground, Minho explained, running his scaled fingers over the glowing storage crystals. The surface period archives are much older and harder to access. Those are exactly what I need to see, Do-hyun said, settling into a chair designed for Velkhari physiology. It was uncomfortable, but he could manage. Minho activated one of the ancient storage crystals, and holographic images began to appear in the air above the device. The first images showed Velkhari cities on the surface, but they looked completely different from what Do-hyun had expected. Instead of the harsh geometric structures he had seen underground, the surface cities flowed naturally with the crystal formations. Buildings grew from the crystalline network itself, shaped by Velkhari hands but following the natural patterns of growth. Gardens of crystal flowers bloomed between structures, and streams of pure energy flowed like rivers through the urban areas. Your people were artists, Do-hyun observed. These cities are beautiful, Minho beamed with pride. The old texts say our ancestors could sing to the crystals and shape them with sound. It was the foundation of our early technology. The next series of images showed something that made Do-hyun lean forward with interest. Velkhari were working alongside creatures that looked very much like the shadow maw, though smaller and with different coloration. The creatures were using their claws to carefully adjust crystal formations while Velkhari operated harmonic instruments. There, Do-hyun pointed at the hologram. Your ancestors worked with them. They were partners. Minho stared at the images with wide eyes. These creatures, they look like the descriptions of the shadow maw's ancestors, but our histories say we have always feared the surface predators. Your recent histories say that, Do-hyun corrected. What do the older records show? They spent hours going through ancient files. The pattern became clear as they worked backward through time. The partnership between Velkhari and the shadow maw's species had lasted for millennia. The creatures, which the ancient Velkhari called keepers of the light paths, had served as guardians and caretakers of the planet's crystal network. The relationship began to change about 400 years ago. The record showed increasing references to deep mining and core extraction projects. Images appeared of massive excavation sites that cut deep into the planet's crust. Far below the natural crystal formations, what were they mining for? Do-hyun asked. Minho consulted the technical specifications in the files. Quantum crystals from the planetary core. They wanted to create more powerful energy sources for space travel and military applications. The timeline became tragic as they continued reading. The deep mining operations began to destabilize the natural crystal network. The harmonic frequencies that held the floating islands aloft started to fluctuate. Weather patterns changed. The aurora-like energy displays that provided light and warmth to the surface began to fade. The keepers of the light paths tried to warn the Velkari. Ancient records showed detailed accounts of their attempts at communication, using the same bioluminescent patterns Do-hyun had witnessed. When warnings failed to stop the mining operations, the creatures began physically interfering with the equipment. They were trying to save the planet, Do-hyun realized. The mining was destroying the entire ecosystem. The final entries in the surface period archives were heartbreaking to read. As the crystal network destabilized further, both species began to suffer. The Velkari lost the ability to shape crystals with sound, as the harmonic frequencies became chaotic. The keepers grew larger and more aggressive as they tried desperately to protect the remaining stable formations. Fear and misunderstanding replaced cooperation. The Velkari saw the creatures' increasingly desperate behavior as unprovoked attacks. The keepers saw the continued mining as a threat to all life on the planet. Within 50 years, open warfare had erupted. The Velkari retreated underground to escape the conflict, Minho said, his voice heavy with newfound understanding. But they also continued the mining operations using automated systems. They never stopped. Do-hyun sat back in his chair processing the implications. So the Shadowmaw is not a predator at all. It is the last of the keepers, still trying to protect what remains of the crystal network. Every attack on Velkari installations has been an attempt to stop the mining that is slowly killing the planet. They gathered the most important files and prepared to present their findings to the council. But as they left the archives, they encountered High Priestess Nara and 2 armed guards waiting in the corridor. "Scholar Minho," Nara said coldly, "you have been accessing restricted historical files without proper authorization. And you, human, have been filling his head with dangerous ideas." "These are not ideas," Do-hyun replied calmly. "These are facts from your own historical records. Your people and the Shadowmaw were allies once. The conflict started because of ecological damage from deep mining operations." Nara's golden eyes flashed with anger. "Those records are corrupted and unreliable. You cannot trust information that old. The Shadowmaw is a killer that has terrorized our people for generations. That is the only truth that matters." "The mining operations are still active," Minho said quietly. "The automated systems continue to extract quantum crystals from the core. The destabilization is getting worse every year." "Enough," Nara snapped. She turned to the guards. "Escort Scholar Minho to detention for unauthorized archive access." The human will return to his quarters and prepare for his mission. As the guards led Minho away, he called out to Do-hyun. "The deep mining station is in Sector 7. The extraction rate has tripled in the past decade. The planet cannot survive much longer at this rate." Do-hyun watched them disappear around a corner, then turned back to Nara. "You know he is right, don't you? Deep down, you know the truth about what really happened." "I know that our people are dying," Nara replied. "I know that children grow weak in the darkness of these tunnels. I know that the Shadowmaw stands between us and reclaiming our world. Everything else is speculation and ancient nonsense." "What if I could prove the connection?" Do-hyun asked. "What if I could show you that the Shadowmaw is trying to help, not hurt?" "Then you would be a fool," Nara said. "And a dead fool at that. You will go to the surface tomorrow and fulfill your contract, or we will find a way to send you back to your mountain to die in the ice." As she walked away, Do-hyun made a decision that would change everything. He would return to the surface, but not to kill the Shadowmaw. Instead, he would try something that no Velkari had attempted in 300 years. He would try to talk to it. That evening, Do-hyun prepared for his unauthorized mission. He studied the bioluminescent patterns he had recorded during his first encounter with the Shadowmaw, looking for anything that might represent a basic communication system. He also researched what little information was available about the deep mining operations in Sector 7. Elder Junho appeared at his quarters near midnight, moving quietly to avoid the guards that Nara had posted in the corridors. "I have brought you something," the old Velkari whispered, producing a small device from beneath his robes. "It is a harmonic translator. Very old technology from the surface period. If the creature truly uses the same communication methods as its ancestors, this might help you understand it. Why are you helping me? Do-hyun asked. Junho's scarred face showed deep sadness. Because I am old enough to remember the stories my grandmother told me. Stories of the time when the sky sang with crystal music and the keepers danced in the light paths. I never believed they were true until I saw those archive files today. He pressed the device into Do-hyun's hands. I do not know if this will work after so many years, but if there is even a small chance that the old partnership could be restored, the mining operations would have to stop, Do-hyun said. The Velkari would have to give up their quantum crystal extraction and find other sources of energy. Then perhaps it is time for our people to learn a different way to live, Junho replied. Perhaps it is time to remember what we lost when we chose fear over friendship. The next morning, Do-hyun returned to the surface with the harmonic translator hidden in his equipment pack. He also carried detailed maps of the mining operations and a plan that was either brilliant or completely insane. He was going to try to convince two species that had been at war for 3 centuries to work together to save their dying world. As he walked across the crystal plains toward the Shadow Maw's territory, Do-hyun reflected on the irony of his situation. The Velkari had summoned him to destroy their planet's greatest enemy. Instead, he was about to try to become its greatest ally. The twin suns were rising over the crystal formations, painting everything in golden light. Somewhere in that beautiful damaged landscape, the last keeper of the light paths was waiting. Do-hyun just hoped it would give him a chance to explain before deciding whether to trust him or eat him. Do-hyun found the Shadow Maw near the Great Crystal Spire, the largest formation in the Forbidden Zone. The creature was doing something that completely changed his understanding of its nature. It was carefully adjusting small crystal growths at the base of the spire, using its claws with the precision of a surgeon. You are gardening, Do-hyun said softly, setting down his equipment pack at a safe distance. You are taking care of the crystal network. The Shadow Maw looked up at his approach but did not move away. Its 6 eyes focused on him with what seemed like recognition. The bioluminescent patterns along its neck began to pulse in the same sequence Do-hyun had seen during their first encounter. Do-hyun activated the harmonic translator that Junho had given him. The device hummed to life, and suddenly the Shadow Maw's light patterns were accompanied by musical tones. The tones rose and fell in complex harmonies that reminded Do-hyun of whale songs or the mathematical sequences used in quantum physics. Hello again, he said, adjusting the translator's settings to see if it could convert his words into light patterns. The device projected a simple pattern of blue and white lights. The Shadow Maw tilted its massive head and responded with its own sequence. This time the translator converted the pattern into something resembling words. Caution, unknown, purpose, question. Do-hyun felt a surge of excitement. The translation was rough, but communication was definitely happening. I am Do-hyun. I come from another world. I want to understand. I want to help. His words became a pattern of green and gold lights. The Shadow Maw studied the display for several moments, then responded with a much longer sequence. Pain. Network. Dying. Deep wounds. Cannot heal. Small ones below ground. Do not understand. Continue. Damage. The message was clear. The creature was talking about the Velkari mining operations and their effect on the crystal network. It knew the Velkari were causing damage, and it was frustrated by their inability to understand the consequences. Do-hyun sat down on a crystal formation to show he was not threatening. I have learned about the deep mining. I have seen the old records. I know about the partnership between your people and the small ones. I want to restore that partnership. The Shadow Maw's entire posture changed. It moved closer, lowering its massive head to Do-hyun's level. The bioluminescent patterns became more complex and urgent. Old songs, memory, light, paths together build harmony, then silence, fear. Separation, network fails, keepers die, one remains. Do-hyun felt his heart break a little at that last part. You are the last one? The last of your people? Last guardian cannot maintain all paths. Too much damage, need help, small ones. Will not. Listen. The creature gestured with one clawed hand toward the mining equipment scattered around the area. Its light patterns flashed red with distress. I will help you, Do-hyun promised. But I need to understand more. Can you show me what the mining is doing to the network? The Shadow Maw considered this request, then made a sound that the translator interpreted as agreement. It turned and began walking deeper into the Forbidden Zone, clearly expecting Do-hyun to follow. They traveled for hours through increasingly spectacular crystal formations. The Shadow Maw moved like a living part of the landscape, never disturbing the delicate energy patterns that flowed between the crystals. It occasionally stopped to make minor adjustments to formations, always improving the flow of energy through the network. Eventually, they reached a place that took Do-hyun's breath away. It was a natural amphitheater formed by towering crystal spires, with a pool of liquid energy at the center. The pool reflected images like a three-dimensional movie screen, showing scenes from across the planet. Network center can see all paths from here, the Shadow Maw explained through the translator. The images in the pool shifted to show the deep mining operations. Massive automated extractors worked deep underground, tearing quantum crystals from the planet's core. With each extraction, visible shock waves spread through the energy network, disrupting the flow patterns and causing some formations to go dark. "Show me what it was like before," Do-hyun requested. The Shadow Maw touched the edge of the pool with one claw, and the images changed to show the past. The crystal network had once been brilliant, with energy flowing smoothly through every formation. Floating islands moved in perfect harmony overhead. The aurora displays were constant and beautiful. Valkyrie cities integrated seamlessly with the natural patterns, and creatures like the Shadow Maw worked alongside Valkyrie engineers to maintain the system. "It was perfect," Do-hyun whispered. "Perfect balance, all life-connected harmony," the Shadow Maw agreed. Then the images changed again to show the present. Now, broken, dying, soon, complete, failure, all, die. The current state of the network was tragic to see. Vast sections had gone dark entirely. The remaining active areas were overloaded, trying to compensate for the damaged sections. The floating islands hung lower than they should, held aloft by failing energy fields. Even the twin suns seemed dimmer as the planet's atmospheric processors struggled with reduced power. "How long do we have?" Do-hyun asked. The Shadow Maw made calculations using the light patterns on its hide. 2 seasons, maybe 3 then. Cascade. Failure. Planet. Dies. Do-hyun stared at the images in the pool, his mind racing. The situation was worse than anyone realized. The Valkyrie were not just poisoning their relationship with the planet's guardians. They were literally destroying the world they lived on. "I need to bring someone here," he said. "A young Valkyrie named Minho. He has seen the old records. He might be able to help both our peoples understand the truth." "Small one. Trustworthy. Question. Yes, he can be trusted. He wants to help restore the partnership just as much as we do." The Shadow Maw considered this for a long time. Finally, it nodded its massive head. "Bring small one here. Show truth. Try. Communication. Again. 1. More. Time." The return journey to the underground city took most of the day. Do-hyun's mind was full of plans and worries. Convincing the Valkyrie to listen would be difficult. Convincing them to stop the mining operations that powered their civilization would be nearly impossible. But the alternative was the death of everyone on the planet, Valkyrie and Shadow Maw alike. He found Minho in the detention center, guarded by 2 bored-looking Valkyrie soldiers. Getting him released required some creative negotiation and a few implied threats about human warriors not working well in captivity. "You have been to see the creature again?" Minho said as they walked through the corridors toward Do-hyun's quarters. "I have been talking with it," Do-hyun corrected. "Its name translates roughly as Keeper of the Light Paths. It is the last of its species, and it has been trying to save this planet for 300 years. Minho stopped walking. "The last of its species? All the others are dead?" "Died trying to protect the crystal network from mining damage. The Keeper wants to try communication with your people one more time. It has agreed to meet with you if you are willing." "Of course I am willing," Minho said immediately. "But High Priestess Nara will never allow it." "Then we do not tell High Priestess Nara," Do-hyun replied. "We go to the surface tonight and we try to save both our peoples before it is too late." That night they slipped past the guards and made their way to the surface entrance. Minho had never been above ground before, and his reaction to the crystal world was everything Do-hyun had hoped for. "It is magnificent," the young Valkyrie whispered, staring up at the energy displays dancing between the spires. "I never imagined it was so beautiful." "Your ancestors helped build this," Do-hyun reminded him. They worked with the keepers to create harmony between technology and nature. The journey to the Great Crystal Spire took longer with Minho along, but the young Velkari was eager and adaptable. He asked dozens of questions about the crystal formations and their energy patterns, showing the kind of scientific curiosity that had made the original partnership possible. The Shadow Maw was waiting for them at the spire, and its reaction to seeing a Velkari on the surface was profound. The creature made sounds that the translator could not convert into words, but the emotion behind them was clear: hope, longing, and deep sadness all mixed together. "Keeper of the Light Paths," Dohyun said formally. "This is Scholar Minho of the Velkari. He has studied the old records and wishes to restore the partnership between our peoples." Minho stepped forward bravely, though Dohyun could see him trembling slightly. "Great Keeper," he said, allowing the translator to convert his words into light patterns. "I apologize for the mistakes of my people. I want to learn. I want to help." The Shadow Maw's response was immediate and overwhelming. Light patterns flowed across its hide in sequences so complex that the translator could barely keep up. The meaning was clear, though. 300 years of isolation and frustration poured out in a flood of communication. For the first time since the war began, a Velkari and a Keeper of the Light Paths were talking to each other as equals. The ground shook violently as Dohyun, Minho, and the Shadow Maw stood near the Great Crystal Spire. The harmonic resonance that usually flowed through the crystal network became chaotic and discordant. Several smaller formations cracked and went dark as energy surged unpredictably through the damaged pathways. "What is happening?" Minho shouted over the sound of cracking crystal. The Shadow Maw's bioluminescent patterns flashed urgent red and orange warnings. The translator converted its response into words filled with alarm. "Deep extraction accelerated, major node failing. Cascade. Beginning. Earlier than predicted." Dohyun activated his communicator to contact the underground city. "This is Dohyun. What is the status of the mining operations?" Elder Junho's voice came through, filled with panic. "The automated systems show massive crystal extraction rates. Something triggered the emergency protocols. The deep miners are operating at maximum capacity." "Shut them down immediately," Dohyun ordered. "I cannot," Junho replied. "Only High Priestess Nara has authorization to modify the mining protocols, and she is not responding to communications." Another shockwave ran through the crystal network, stronger than the first. The floating islands overhead began to list dangerously as their energy supports flickered. In the distance, Dohyun could see one of the smaller islands beginning to fall toward the surface. "We have to get back to the city," he told Minho and the Shadow Maw. "If we can stop the mining operations, we might be able to prevent total network collapse." The Shadow Maw made a decision that surprised both humans and Velkari. Instead of fleeing to safety, it began moving toward the underground city entrance. Its light patterns conveyed determination mixed with desperate hope. Go. Together. Stop. Damage. Save. World. Both. Peoples. The journey back to the underground entrance became a race against time. The crystal formations around them were failing in sequence as the network overloaded. Energy discharges crackled through the air, and the harmonic songs of the crystals became screams of distress. When they reached the surface entrance, they found it sealed. Emergency protocols had activated, locking down all access points to protect the underground population from surface instability. "Junho," Dohyun called through his communicator, "open the surface doors. We are bringing help." "Negative," came High Priestess Nara's voice instead. "All surface access is forbidden during the emergency. You will remain outside until the crisis passes." "The crisis will not pass," Minho shouted into the communicator. "The mining operations are causing the network failure. We have to shut them down or the entire planet will die." "Impossible," Nara replied. "The mining systems are what keep our city powered. Without them, our people will die in the darkness." The Shadow Maw moved close to the sealed doors and pressed its massive hands against the metal surface. Its bioluminescent patterns shifted to the brightest display Dohyun had ever seen, and it began making sounds that resonated through the crystal formations and into the rock beneath. Inside the city, every Velkari could hear and see the creature's attempt at communication. For the first time in 300 years, a Keeper of the Light Paths was directly addressing their entire civilization. The message was simple but powerful. Through the harmonic resonance of the crystal network, the Shadow Maw projected images of the planet's failing systems. It showed the Velkari what their world would look like if the mining continued. Dead crystal formations, lifeless skies, and underground cities buried beneath the rubble of collapsed surface structures. Then it showed them what could be restored. The crystal network rebuilt and functioning, the floating islands returned to their proper heights, and Velkari cities once again integrated with the natural beauty of the surface world. "Open the doors," Elder Junho's voice came through the communicator. "I am overriding the emergency protocols." "Junho, do not dare," Nara commanded. "That creature is our enemy. It seeks to trick us into destroying ourselves." "That creature is trying to save us all," Junho replied. "And I am old enough to remember when honor meant more than fear." The surface doors ground open slowly, revealing the underground entrance chamber filled with armed Velkari guards. High Priestess Nara stood in the center of the group, her staff glowing with stored energy and her expression filled with fury. "Human," she said coldly, "you have broken your contract. Instead of killing our enemy, you have brought it into our home." The Shadow Maw moved slowly through the doorway, careful not to damage the smaller passages designed for Velkari physiology. Its size was overwhelming in the confined space, but it kept its movements gentle and non-threatening. "It is not your enemy," Doyun said, stepping between Nara and the creature. "It is trying to help you. The mining operations are destroying your planet." "The mining operations keep us alive," Nara snapped. "Without quantum crystal power, our life support systems will fail. Our people will suffocate in these tunnels." "Look around you," Minho said, gesturing to the cracked walls and flickering lights in the chamber. "The tunnels are already failing. The surface instability is spreading underground. Soon there will be nowhere left to hide." As if to emphasize his point, another massive tremor shook the chamber. Dust and small rocks. In the complete darkness of the mining control center, the Shadow Maw's bioluminescent patterns became the only source of light. The creature's hide pulsed, with complex sequences of colors and symbols as it reached out through the crystal network to assess the damage and begin the delicate process of stabilization. "Emergency power activated," Chief Engineer Hyunwoo announced as dim backup lighting flickered to life. "We have maybe 5 hours before life support fails completely." Doyun watched the Shadow Maw work, fascinated by the precision of its movements. The creature had placed its massive hands on 2 of the control panels and was somehow interfacing directly with the monitoring systems. Data streams flowed across the screen showing crystal network status throughout the planet. "It is reading the entire planetary system," Minho whispered in amazement. "Look at those data flows. It can see every crystal formation, every energy pathway, every point of damage." The Shadow Maw's communication patterns became urgent and focused. Through the harmonic translator, its message reached everyone in the control room. Critical. Nodes. Failing. Must. Stabilize. Major. Pathways. First. Need small ones to assist. Show you how. "What do you need us to do?" High Priestess Nara asked, her earlier hostility replaced by desperate cooperation. "Send teams to 3 locations will guide you. 2 crystal adjustment points must work together. Harmonize frequencies." On the main display screen, 3 locations appeared highlighted in pulsing blue light. Each was a major crystal formation on different levels of the underground city. "I will take a team to the upper-level site," Elder Junho volunteered immediately. "I'll handle the middle level," Chief Engineer Hyunwoo said, already gathering his technical staff. "That leaves the deepest site for me," Nara said grimly. "It is closest to the core damage and will be the most dangerous." "I will go with you," Dohyun offered. "Human physiology might be useful if the energy discharges are severe." "And I will coordinate communications between all teams," Minho added. Settling beside the Shadow Maw at the control station, the teams dispersed quickly through the city's emergency corridors. As they moved through the tunnels, the structural damage became more obvious. Cracks ran through the walls, support beams had shifted out of alignment, and the familiar hum of the crystal power systems was replaced by ominous silence. Dohyun and Nara's team reached the deepest crystal formation. After 20 minutes of careful navigation through partially collapsed passages, the formation was massive. A cluster of crystals that reached from floor to ceiling in a cavern carved from the bedrock itself. This was one of the first crystals our ancestors found when they came underground, Nara explained as they set up their equipment. It has powered the city's core systems for 300 years. The crystal cluster was dark and cold, its usual gentle glow completely absent. Stress fractures ran through several of the larger formations, and the harmonic resonance that should have filled the cavern was replaced by an eerie silence. Minho's voice came through their communicators. All teams, the Keeper is ready to begin the restoration process. You should see your crystals beginning to respond to the harmonization signals. Almost immediately, the crystal formation in front of Do-hyun and Nara began to show faint traces of light deep within its structure. The patterns were different from the steady glow they remembered, more complex and rhythmic. The Keeper says to place your hands on the crystal surfaces and follow the harmonic frequencies it is sending through the network, Minho translated. Your bioelectric fields will help stabilize the energy flows. Nara hesitated for a moment, then pressed her scaled palms against the largest crystal. Do-hyun did the same and immediately felt a tingling sensation as energy began to flow through the formation. I can feel it, Nara whispered in wonder. The crystal is alive. It is responding to our touch. The restoration process was unlike anything Do-hyun had ever experienced. Through their contact with the crystals, he could sense the vast network that connected every formation on the planet. He could feel the damage caused by years of aggressive mining, but also the incredible resilience of the system as it began to heal itself. Upper-level team reporting success. Junho's voice came through the communicator. The crystals here are glowing brighter than I have seen in decades. Middle-level crystals are stabilizing, Hyunwoo added. Power flow is beginning to return to the residential sectors. But the real breakthrough came when Nara began to sing. It started as a low humming that matched the harmonic frequencies coming through the crystal network. As her voice strengthened, the crystals responded by glowing brighter and pulsing in rhythm with her song. The stress fractures began to heal and new growth appeared at the edges of the formation. I remember, she said, tears streaming down her face. My grandmother taught me this song when I was young. I thought it was just a lullaby, but it was crystal singing. It was the old way. Do-hyun found that his own voice could contribute to the harmonic patterns, though he could not match the precision of Nara's Valkyrie vocal cords. Together, they helped guide the crystal formation back to full health and functionality. Similar reports came in from the other teams. Throughout the city, Valkyrie were rediscovering abilities they had forgotten they possessed. The art of crystal singing, lost for generations, was returning as the Shadow Maw guided them through the restoration process. Within 4 hours, basic power was restored throughout the underground city. But more importantly, the planetary crystal network was stabilized and functioning at levels not seen in centuries. All teams returned to the control center, Minho announced. The Keeper wants to show you something. When they reconvened in the mining control center, the main display screens showed a view of the planet from space. The aurora displays that surrounded Velthara were brighter and more beautiful than any of the Valkyrie had ever seen. The floating islands had returned to their proper altitudes, and the crystal formations across the surface pulsed with healthy energy flows. Network, restored, planet, safe, for, now, the Shadow Maw communicated, but must maintain partnership, never return to destructive mining methods. We understand, High Priestess Nara said solemnly. The old ways nearly destroyed our world. We will learn the new ways, the partnership ways. Not new ways, the Shadow Maw corrected gently. Old ways, true ways, ancestors. New, harmony. Better than separation. Elder Junho stepped forward with a formal proposal. Great Keeper, on behalf of the Valkyrie people, I request that you accept our apology for 300 years of fear and misunderstanding. We ask to restore the ancient partnership between our peoples. The Shadow Maw's response was immediate and filled with joy. Partnership accepted, gladly have waited so long for this moment, but there was still one more surprise to come. The partnership should include 3 peoples, not just 2, Do-hyun said, stepping forward. Earth and humanity should be part of this alliance. We can serve as mediators and bridges between different forms of intelligence. Human, Do-hyun, brought understanding, when fear ruled all. Yes, 3, way, partnership, strong, like triangle crystal formation. High, Priestess Nara nodded in agreement. Humanity showed us that strength lies not in destroying our enemies, but in understanding them. Captain Do-hyun, would you be willing to stay on Velthara as our first interplanetary ambassador? Do-hyun looked around the control room at the faces of his new friends and allies. The Velkari who had summoned him to be their weapon had become his partners in building something better. The creature they had asked him to destroy had become the key to their world's salvation. I would be honored, he replied, but I will need to send word to Earth about what we have accomplished here. Other humans will want to learn from this example. Over the following months, the three-way alliance grew stronger and more sophisticated. The Velkari established new surface settlements designed in harmony with the Crystal Network. The Shadow Maw began teaching them advanced ecological management techniques. Do-hyun set up communication systems that allowed the three species to share knowledge and coordinate planetary stewardship efforts. Human volunteers began arriving from Earth to serve as cultural ambassadors and technical specialists. The Velkari shared their crystal technology and harmonic sciences. The Shadow Maw provided insights into sustainable planetary management that revolutionized ecological thinking. High Priestess Nara underwent the most dramatic transformation of all. She established a new spiritual order based on cooperation and environmental harmony. The temples she designed integrated crystal singing with advanced technology, creating places of worship that were also centers of learning and ecological research. The mining operations were converted to crystal cultivation projects. Instead of tearing resources from the planet's core, the Alliance learned to grow new crystal formations that provided clean, renewable energy. The floating islands became sites for joint research stations where all three species worked together on projects that benefited the entire galaxy. 1 year after his arrival on Velthara, Do-hyun stood with the Shadow Maw on the observation deck of the main research station. Below them, the crystal world sparkled with health and vitality. Velkari children played in crystal gardens while their parents worked alongside human scientists and the great guardian creature they